Hi, I'm Jeff Lowe, Chief Executive Officer of Asian Sky Group at Asian Sky Media. Here as part of our video presentations, as part of our release of our year-end 2020 commercial helicopter report for the Asia Pacific region. I have with me today Yuan Tay from Skyports in Singapore. And what I'll just ask him to do right at this point in time is do a little quick introduction of himself. And also, you can take some time, Yun, to just give a little bit more background for those that aren't familiar about what Skyports is all about. And that, for me, is both the infrastructure side and also touching on the drone side as well, if you will, please.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Asian Sky Group, for bringing us into this podcast series. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Yuan Tay. I am the head of Asia Pacific for Skyports. And a quick overview of Skyports. Skyports, we were founded in 2017, and we are the owner and operator of vertiports, which are infrastructure to enable electric air taxi operations. We are focused on a number of cities around the world, and we are looking to launch commercial flights as early as 2023. We also do a different business line called Delivery by Drones service. And there we provide cargo drone delivery solutions for medical, logistics, and e-commerce sectors, such as National Health Service in the UK, as well as the Royal Mail in UK. And the sole purpose of operating a delivery by drone service is really for us to understand operations of unmanned vehicles, talk to regulators, and really understand the challenges that comes around, so that when we do implement and deploy infrastructure around the world, we know exactly what we need to do for our operators that are operating air taxi services. Skyports have offices in London, Singapore, and San Francisco, and we are funded by Deutsche Bahn, which is the German railway operator, Group ADP, the world's largest airport operator and owner, Arendelle Aviation, the family office of Ryanair, which we are all very familiar with, as well as Levitate Capital.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for me, also, the drones service is something that's available now, and that you're doing that. And so certainly, as with all startups, and I can sort of call you still a startup, although you're getting a little on in age, you've got to have a revenue source. The sooner you can have one, the sooner the better. So certainly, doing the cargo drone deliveries and so on, that's part of, I guess, the business model, which hopefully brings you revenues now, which is, I'm sure, always welcomed by everybody. So Skyports, very interesting part of the business in my mind. And again, maybe just to highlight some of the things that you're doing, and I don't know how much kind of detail you can go into, but certainly you mentioned NHS. And also, for us out here in Asia, much like yourself, we're certainly very aware of you guys working together with Volocopter, certainly the Singapore installation that happened. So maybe give a little bit more insight into, because for me it exemplifies what Skyports is all about and what they're doing. So maybe you can give a little bit more detail about exactly what the NHS service is, because it's for me it is groundbreaking stuff, much like then also the Volocopter installation or vertiport that you put into Singapore. Again, all groundbreaking stuff. So can you give us a little bit more detail about those two?
Absolutely, Jeff. And the NHS project is a project that we are really proud of, because it's not just groundbreaking, but it's also saving lives.
Yeah.
The NHS project really started in the summer of 2020, when we responded to the challenges of COVID-19 and helped the UK perform its first BVLOS medical deliveries. Now, BVLOS stands for Beyond Visual Line of Sight, and we were actually delivering and transporting COVID test kits between the Scottish mainland to an island 17 kilometers away. Over the span of 1 week in the summer, we conducted over 40 BVLOS flights, and we carried over 240 cargo in totality, right? And the purpose of this 1 week project was not just to support the COVID response, but also to show to the UK government and the UK Civil Aviation Authority on the feasibility of conducting such drone operations. That was a huge success, that was over 9 months ago. And subsequently, we've now received funding from the European Space Agency to move into phase 2 of the project, which is happening today. Today, we are conducting, a 3-month project on a much larger and more sophisticated scale than the original project last year. And we were, in fact, the first UK operator to receive dangerous goods approval, which means that we are now able to transport blood samples, pathology samples,
Right.
and some other, more sensitive medical products between facilities in Scotland. And this is a 3-month project. We are halfway through it, and we've already completed over 4,000 kilometers of flight distance, 4,000 hours saved of waiting time compared to the traditional the ground and ferry transportation. And then I would just maybe highlight a quick example that happened last week. One of the hospitals that we were delivering a blood sample to, usually had their scheduled pickup in the morning at 9 o'clock. And in one afternoon, there was an unwell patient that came in late in the afternoon. Blood samples were taken, and they would, in traditional days, they would have to wait till the next morning for the next pickup service.
Right.
But what they did was they, activated our ad hoc delivery service,
Yep.
loaded the blood sample into our drones by 4 p.m. And by 6:30 p.m. the same evening, they were able to start treatments on the passenger and on the patient,
Yeah.
excuse me, and potentially, avoided a loss of eyesight for that particular patient.
Well,
So we
as
were
you
very,
say,
very
it's
proud of it.
it's
Yeah.
life-saving stuff. So, and
Yeah.
what I love about it again is that a lot of people are talking about it, but you're doing it, dude. Which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
so. I mean,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
great to
and
see these applications actually coming to life
absolutely.
and delivering what they promised. I mean, so
Yeah, and for you, Jeff, and any audience who's listening to this podcast, go onto our website and there's a video that you can watch, an onboard camera
yeah,
of one of this mission that was performed by our drones, and it shows, the cooperation between hospitals and how the drone was delivering COVID samples between different hospitals in Scotland.
okay.
Um,
So
the
now
other thing you wanted, yeah.
on the other side of the business.
Absolutely, and which is what we are really excited about, on for the longer term, is building infrastructure for the upcoming urban air mobility industry. And in Singapore, we are very proud to have partnered with Volocopter, and then this, potentially is a two-part partnership. This started way back in 2018 when we started planning for a test flight 2 years ago, and we were able to do that in October 2019, where we built the world's first passenger vertiport in the floating platform of Marina Bay. It was up there for a week. We hosted over 8,000 visitors over the week-long period, and amongst the visitors were regulators. We talked to the civil aviation authorities, the urban planning authorities, and people was governing this industry.
Yeah.
We engaged
Economic development people, very
exactly.
important.
We talked to our partners, real estate owners,
Yeah.
people were interested in launching this service, not just in Singapore, but around Southeast Asia. And then lastly, but most importantly, we opened it up to the public, right? So we had a lot of public guests walk through the terminal and started to experience what is it like going through a vertiport, what kind of check-in services is there, what the biometric check-in, the efficient security screening that we have. And most importantly, our partner Volocopter, they also flew a couple of flights from our vertiport, and they showed to the public, the reality of air taxi services, right? It's not just on paper, but they actually see it and almost couldn't hear it fly in front of them, which is really, really cool.
And I'm not sure if it's your website or Volocopter's, but they had to put a big sticker down at the bottom saying, "This is a real photo." Okay,
Yes, exactly.
This is a real video. We haven't created this. Okay, this is real.
Exactly. And so going forward, we continue to take our partnership with Volocopter in Singapore, and we are now working very closely with them to design and build the world first permanent commercial vertiport in the Marina South area of Singapore, right? We can't disclose more than that, but it's going to be very exciting vertiport design.
But on that, perfect sort of lay into what I'm going to say. But
yeah.
So what are the challenges then? Okay, you just can't pick a patch of grass and put up a vertiport. Okay, so what are the challenges that are facing? I guess starting to put in place that infrastructure that's required for air mobility. What are the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, usually when we talk about challenges in this industry, there's three main challenges, right? Number one is technology, whether the vehicle technology will get there, whether we get certified, whether the regulators approve it. But we think that it will get there, with the amount of money and time and effort that everyone is putting their attention on, it will get there, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years. The second thing is public acceptance.
Mm.
People, getting used to things flying over their head, people, getting used to paying a certain price point to get on one of these machines. Let's be honest, it's going to start at a high price point, but we all are working very hard towards moving that price down to something
Yeah.
that's palatable
Yeah.
to the mass market. And the last thing which you've highlighted, Jeff, is the challenges around building infrastructure, right? And when it comes to infrastructure, it's not just about laying concrete and building a building, but there's a lot of technicalities that we've got to think about. The safety aspect of it. How do you manage fire safety? Battery fire safety is something new. How do you
Yeah. So when
manage?
we talk about infrastructure, exactly what do we mean
Right,
when it comes to
exactly.
urban air mobility? What do you mean when you say infrastructure?
Absolutely, and then infrastructure can be really broken down into two categories. You've got the hardware infrastructure, the concrete, the landing pads, the terminal, the maintenance facilities, potentially even a traffic control tower, and then you've got a software part of it, right? The unmanned traffic
Yep.
management system, the passenger data system, and all the other data stack that goes beneath the hardware that we wouldn't see as public or as passengers boarding the aircraft. So for us, Skyports, we do both of them. We lay the concrete, design the terminal, but we also go behind the scenes and manage the schedule, manage the traffic management of the schedule in urban air traffic in Singapore.
Right. And so when I talk specifically about a vertiport or a voloport or whatever, what does that encompass? I mean, we are all used to maybe an FBO experience or an airport terminal experience. What is it going to be when it comes down to urban air mobility?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a trick question, okay? Because it was again, we discussed it this morning on the panel. So I'll relay some of the comments that came out of that one once you tell me what you think. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it would have everything that everyone is familiar with, right? A landing pad, passenger gates, maintenance facilities, terminal area for passengers to board. It's not that much different from what you can
right,
experience in an FBO, but there are a few things that is unique to a vertiport, and there are challenges to building a vertiport. Number one is the charging facilities, right?
yeah,
There's, as you mentioned, there's more than 100, 200, 300 different vehicle designs out there today, and everyone has a different charging philosophy, whether
yep,
it's battery swapping, whether it's direct charging, whether it's hydrogen fuel cells,
yep,
whether it's a
yep,
hybrid of all of the above, right?
yep,
So as vertiport infrastructure provider, we need to be able to make sure that our vertiport is agnostic to any of the
yes,
above, right? So that's number one. Number two, that's going to be challenging is the volume of air taxis that we envision, landing and taking off
yep,
in our vertiport. And that means you need, efficient way of processing passenger, as well as an efficient way to manage the aircraft that's taking off and landing at this infrastructure, right? So having an unmanned traffic management system that can manage these traffic is unprecedented, and having that integrated with conventional aircraft is a challenge that we think that we all need to overcome. All right. So those
yep,
I think would be the two kind of main things that's unique and challenges to building a vertiport. And of course, when it comes to building a infrastructure that's going to be there to serve the public for the next 10, 20 years, we want to be technology forward as well. Right. We are thinking about ways on, biometric check-in system, contactless ticketing booths, efficient security screening, and a personalized customer experience that no matter whether you're a businessman or tourist or commuter going through our vertiport, you get to experience the kind of unique experience that you would expect at a vertiport.
right. Yeah, I mean some of the comments that came from the panel this morning is that Amit Dutta from Blade India was talking about that. He was talking about lounges and people stopping in. pre-flight and having a cappuccino, and so on and so forth. Whereas some others are the opinion, no, the whole modus operandus of urban air mobility is time. So it's going to be guys arriving and looking to get on their air taxi and go. I don't want to stand at the curb and have a coffee first before I get into my taxi. And as you said, a lot of it is going to be, well, in order to make it work, requires volume. So again, you're going to have a lot of takeoff and landings going on over a certain period of time. And one of the issues that I know has come up that's been discussed, a lot of times these vertiports have to be in highly dense urban areas to begin with. So the size available may not facilitate having multiple landing pads. And so, as you say, there's a whole software side of this, which you're trying to manage that air zone around that vertiport, because you potentially could have air taxis coming in and out all the time. I mean,
Exactly
again, if you
right.
relay it kind of to the current ground experience, normally there's a lineup of taxi and a lineup of people trying to get into these things. And I can see where it's the same sort of thing, where you've got, obviously the taxis are coming in and out and people are waiting to board. I'm looking for that taxi to take me downtown. There's 3 other guys in front of me, because as we know, most of the current air mobility vehicles, eVTOLs, I mean, they're not carrying 10 passengers. They're carrying 2 or 4 at the most. So there's going to have to be a lot of them flying around to maybe satisfy the market. And again, and of course, the market will develop as we go along. So, question that I ask is, but in a lot of these urban centers, there are helipads already. So what about a helipad being a vertipad?
Absolutely. I mean, to a certain extent, we are looking at them, and of course,
Yeah.
with the right type of retrofits, it could work. But that's the beauty of a urban air mobility industry, is that it's better than a helipad. It's better than a helicopter,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
With the noise level and the safety level of such eVTOL vehicles, we can get much closer to city centers, right? So in today's world, where you have a heliport, it's still kind of in the outskirts of city centers. It's still pretty far away, just because the noise of helicopters are still a nuisance to residents and
Yep.
tenants of buildings.
Yep.
So we think that vertiports can be much closer to downtown, can be inside downtown on rooftops. Then
Yep.
the other option is rooftop helipads, right? In many cities around the world, Brazil, Tokyo, Bangkok, there's
Yeah,
tons
Bangkok,
of
Manila,
helipads
yeah, helipads.
on top of buildings. But bear in mind that these helipads are for emergency services, right? They are
Yeah.
built with the mindset of if there's a ambulance or emergency evacuation, that's what it's used for. Which means the current infrastructure is not designed for vertiport operations, right? Getting passengers up to the rooftop, there might not be a dedicated lift system, right? You don't want your passengers to be climbing up staircase and
Yeah.
going to an emergency helipad. So that is a challenge in itself. And then getting battery charging facilities up on top of rooftops, that's not an easy feat as well, right? So we're definitely looking and evaluating helipads, but that's not the solution in the long run.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's exactly that. And most of the helipads that I've used, it's a climb to the roof, up through some narrow stairwell, past the AC units and heat exchangers and everything else to get to a roof that you don't want to spend much time on, because you're pretty exposed up there to begin with. So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, okay. And so, what's in the immediate future for Skyports? What have you got on your diary coming up over the next 12, 24 months?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share, potentially two exciting projects that is in the public domain that we can share with
Yep.
you. There's a lot of projects that is still under the water that we are not able to surface yet, but
Sure.
watch out for them. But the first is obviously, as I mentioned earlier at the start of this podcast, launching commercial services in Singapore together with Volocopter.
Yep.
Right, we are in the midst of acquiring a piece of land from the Singapore authorities, and we hope to be able to break ground construction at the end of this year, beginning of next year, because both Volocopter and Skyports, we are committed to bringing air taxi services in Singapore by end of next year or early 2023.
Let's
So-
just add here that Singapore is committed to it as well.
Exactly, exactly
Okay.
right. And you would have seen, I'm sure Volocopter has shared with you, you may have seen the press release
Yep.
of both the Economic Development Board as well as the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore,
Yep. Yep.
aligning on type certification and timelines of that launch in Singapore. So we are very
Yep.
excited,
Very
and
exciting.
that is why we chose Singapore as one of our first cities to launch because
Yep.
of the coordinated response by the government bodies. The other project that we are really excited about is the Paris Olympics 2024, right? We have now joined the consortium that's being led by one of our investors, Group ADP, and they've brought together Skyports as the vertiport provider, as well as five different eVTOL OEMs to investigate and start trialing eVTOL flights at Cergy-Pontoise Airport, which is about 30 kilometers north of the city center of Paris. And at this airport, what we'll do at Skyports is we're going to build a vertiport for vehicle OEMs to test their operations, think
Right.
about how they integrate ground infrastructure with kind of their operations on the ground as well as in the air. How do we integrate airspace between an active runway that caters to business aviation aircraft, and as well as having eVTOL aircraft flying in the same airspace? And then we will also be inviting public of the Parisian cities to come and view this test site, and all of these activities will start in June of this year, and it's all leading up to the 2024 Olympics, where we hope to be able to launch taxi services as well between different parts of Paris.
Right. Yeah. Um, as I said at the very beginning, someone has to lead the way, and you guys are doing it. So, all great stuff. Maybe just the last thing to talk about, and we kind of addressed it this morning as well. I mean, most of the initial service is all planned to be piloted,
Mm-hmm.
but there is certainly a big part of the urban air mobility is for them to be autonomous. And
Absolutely.
so, how do you see that sort of unfolding? And Lionel from Ascent said, "Yeah, maybe in 20 years." I guess how do you view it, or how does Skyports view that, the autonomous element?
Yeah, we believe that having autonomy would reduce the cost tremendously for some of the OEMs, especially for Volocopter, where they have two seats, and if they can increase the capacity of the aircraft by 100% by taking out the pilot, then
Yeah.
that's good for everyone, right? But
Yep.
we do think that that will take some time.
Yeah.
You will need some
Yeah.
time for people to accept electric air vehicles flying in the air before they
Yep.
then move to the next stepping stone of not having a pilot on board,
Yep.
right? So it would, in our sense, it's probably at the end of the decade, if not, early 2030s, where we see the first
Yeah.
autonomous kind of service. The technology is there, right? You see
Yeah. Yeah. No.
drones
Everyone
flying
admitted that. Everyone
autonomously.
said the technology's there.
Yeah,
To a certain extent, the flight management, the air traffic management systems are
hmm
there. It's just people aren't ready.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That pretty much wraps it up. I guess
Great.
if unless you had any other closing comments that you wanted to make. So
No, I mean, thanks for having
yeah, yeah.
having us, Jeff. I mean, infrastructure is always an afterthought when it comes to launching air mobility services. So I think it's good
Well, I
to
think
just
generally,
put that in
generally,
mind. Yeah.
yeah, generally, I think certainly when it comes to urban air mobility, I mean, I do get the sense that everyone's trying to get together and plan it properly.
Yeah.
So everyone is very keenly aware that to totally achieve the benefits of urban air mobility, you have to effectively manage all aspects of that person's trip, and that means, yes, the equipment, but the time to pass through the vertiport has to be managed. The ground transportation to the vertiport has to be managed, and so everyone is keenly aware that it is a sequence of events, and each component has the potential to make this work or not make this work. And so I think there's pretty good consensus amongst the industry to actually get together and talk about this and see if we can find an effective way to manage it all. And so certainly the infrastructure side is getting a lot of attention right now, which is it should, because it's such an important part of the making everything else work seamlessly as well. So Yuan, I thank you very much for your time today. It was great to hear about the success that Skyports is happening, and obviously Yeah, you've got an exciting, certainly 24, 36 months ahead of you with both Singapore and Paris, if you will, coming online. So I thank you for sharing those thoughts with us, and certainly enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks.